Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one rated sportsbook app out there. I'm your host, Rudolph, joined as always by AJ Haefele. And as promised, today is the Taxi Squad episode of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Now, on the surface, the Taxi Squad seems very simple. 4 to 6 players that every NHL team can bring along. Doesn't count against their cap hit, can be whoever they want. But when you dig a little bit deeper, the rules are actually quite complex when it comes down to who can, who can't, and what you can do with Taxi Squad members. If you haven't checked it out yet, head on over to thednvr.com and look at AJ's written piece on all of this where he breaks down all of the rules. Highly recommend that, first of all. But AJ, it's a bit more complicated than you would think, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really... Let me actually get my mic here. It's really quite similar to what they had in baseball this year, which is, I think, probably where they just jacked that idea from. It's, 4 to 6 players.
Yep.
And so far, we haven't seen any actual restrictions on exactly which players are eligible or not. So the question of Bowen Byram remains pretty large here, because if he's eligible for the Taxi Squad, this is a boon for the Avs. There's no reason not to keep Bowen Byram around all year, no matter what. If he's ineligible, then they're in the same position that they were before its creation, where what do you do with him? Does he take a roster spot from a veteran? Because at that point, you're looking, the two most likely guys he's going to take a spot from are Ian Cole and Ryan Graves.
For sure.
Just given contracts and age and all that, you'd have to say Ian Cole is really the prime target there. But you could also make the argument that Ian Cole, comfortable playing on the right side, next to Bowen Byram on a third pairing, the classic offensive defenseman, young guy, veteran, like there's a lot of appeal to that as a third pairing.
Definitely.
So where the Byram, where Byram would fit in on the defense continues to be a question. But with the Taxi Squad, I think the conversation has to start with him. Assuming eligibility, he's got to be where it starts. And keeping him around is an easy thing to say yes to.
So let's, just to make it clear, for someone like Bowen Byram, the Taxi Squad would travel with the NHL team all season long, would practice with the NHL team all season long. Mm-hmm. Now, we'll get into how they move up to the NHL team and all that in a little bit. But if he joins the Taxi Squad and intends to stay on the Taxi Squad, that essentially means he's permanently with the Avs this year.
Yeah, exactly. The big thing is if he's on the Taxi Squad all year long and he does not play 7 NHL games, his contract slides.
Yep. So,
and that, I mean, just from a contract standpoint, from a business standpoint, it holds the exact same appeal that it held with Martin Kaut last year.
Yep.
But this year, a year down the road, we're going to see Bowen Byram here later this week. For Team Canada.
Camp. Yep. Well, WJCs too. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to see, okay. Because if this kid goes off at WJCs in kind of, I don't want to say we're expecting him to dominate, but I think we all have pretty high expectations for him.
Yep.
He's slated to play on that first pairing. He should play all situations, a lot of minutes. He's going to be a guy, he's got the A. He was on a gold medal team last year. There are a lot of expectations on him. We want to see a really good performance from him, and he can use that as a launch pad for Avs training camp, which he will now miss because of the WJCs. And then depending on quarantine rules and all that, how he travels back to Denver after that, he could end up missing all of Avs training camp. And if he does that, that's where the taxi squad immediately plays in their favor.
Makes a ton of sense to throw him on that, give him a couple weeks to get the systems or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. He just kind of, you put him on that thing, you let him get up to NHL speed where you're comfortable. The 10 days that they have of training camp, you give him he won't need 10 days because he won't be starting from nowhere. You really just, you give him those couple of days, like maybe a week, and then ease him into the lineup and see what happens. But you've only got the 6 games, so you have to make quick decisions.
Yep.
And you can either do that or you can wait for injury. If they really want to get him in the lineup and they really want to try and, we want to get as many rookie kinks out of the way as we possibly can before the postseason, then they need to get him in games. They just have to. And then the taxi squad becomes irrelevant for him. The other thing for Colorado, outside of Byram, kind of including Byram, but including all of these guys, right now, they're 1.8 million from the cap floor, or from the cap ceiling.
Yep.
And they have 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, 2 goaltenders. They don't need to add another person. The creation of the taxi squad makes it so they don't have to add anybody to that roster.
All of their scratches can be on the taxi squad, essentially.
Exactly, because those guys are going to be practicing, traveling with the team, doing all the team activities. They're essentially the healthy scratches, but the Avs can save a little bit of that money every year or every day. No. And then turn around and if they wanted to, apply that to any bonus performance money that they get, mainly from Cale Makar.
The one thing about doing that is if you're going to use a player from the taxi squad in your lineup, you have to submit that to the NHL by 5 p.m. that day.
So, and they'll know.
Well, 99% of the time they'll know, but in a weird situation where someone gets injured in warm-ups or something, they may want to run one proper scratch. But
yeah, it's a fair point. A guy gets sick, he comes to the rink, and he's like, "Oh, yeah." Those things happen. That would be their way to do it, though. I mean, that's sure.
And this is another one of those situations that we've talked about a lot where you run no scratch for the first month of the season and you save yourself an extra couple $100K on the cap and then you're fine. But
yeah. And honestly, they could even get super cute with it if they wanted to. And on practice days, because the cap is calculated every day.
Yep.
So on off days, they can go with the bare bones roster. And then on game days, they can take a guy off the taxi squad and put him on the roster. Now, and if they were going to get cute like that, then they have to have at least 5 players on their taxi squad at all times, because your taxi squad has to have at least 4 players on it always. And in order to replace a player on the taxi squad, you have to call them up from the AHL, and then they have to go to the taxi squad first. So you can't call a guy up from the AHL and have him show up to the NHL this year. That guy has to go from the AHL to the taxi squad, be quarantined, and then he has to be there for at least a week before he can be removed.
Yep.
So in order to play salary cap shenanigan games, you have to at least have 5 guys, and one of those has to be a goaltender at all times.
Yep.
So you have to have at least 5 guys on your taxi squad, and then on game day every day, you can add a player and then take him off on practice days to save that day's money. And then, you do that for, like you said, you do it for a month, and then you just put those guys on the roster and you stop caring about it because you will have saved enough money.
For sure. It certainly feels like savvy teams can certainly take a significant advantage of this taxi squad.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just something, especially given the flat cap this year, there's going to be a lot of flexibility, a lot of fluctuation going on there. Henry talking about the Western Division as Among Us. Honestly, if the Western Division is Among Us, the Avs are the imposter because they're the ones going around the division murdering everyone. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Travis, I agree. If you're not running 6 players on your taxi squad, it seems kind of weird not to.
So this is where, I think there's a balance that you have to strike here. If you're going to play salary cap games, you got to have 5 guys. If you're not going to do that, then you just roll with the 4. And one of them is a goalie. And so you have just the 3 extra skaters, right? You also want to keep, you're taking players off your AHL team to do this. The Avs and the Eagles both have ambitions of having a competitive AHL team year in, year out. And you would expect they're not going to be taking the Travis Barons and the Ty Lewises, the Josh Andersons, and putting them on the taxi squad. They're going to be taking guys who are expected to play big roles for the Eagles if they're down there. And so the taxi squad, that's 6 players that you take away from the Eagles.
That's true.
So you want, if your taxi squad, if 2 of your taxi squad guys are TJ Tynan, Sheldon Dries, Mike Vecchione, Kiefer Sherwood, Mikko Salamaki, those types of guys, the AHL veterans, you don't care.
Yeah.
If they are, if it's Martin Kaut, if it's Shane Bowers, it's Connor Timmins, it's Bowen Byram, you want to try and find guys, the games for those guys. And they will. Guys are going to get hurt. It's not like these guys are just going to sit around all year long and not do anything. They're going to get into games.
So one of the interesting rules, I think, for this taxi squad is if you're taking a player from the NHL and putting him back down onto the taxi squad, waiver eligibility does come into play.
Yeah, waivers works the same. Moving guys between the NHL and the taxi squad, like demoting a guy, it works exactly the same in terms of waivers. So, you every 30 days, guys have to pass through again if they're eligible for that.
So I do think that will affect somewhat which players we see on a taxi squad. It might be tough for the Avs. Logan O'Connor's still not waiver eligible, correct?
I'm checking because I was just curious.
Because he's the one that would seriously affect, I think. But for previous years, someone like AJ Greer,
he's exempt.
Okay, so O'Connor will be fine then. It's probably not that big of a deal for the Avs in that case, because most of the players they're going to want on a taxi squad are either going to be those AHL vets, which you'd have to go through waivers with, but the Kauts of the world, you're not worried about dealing with that waiver.
Yeah, there are none of the young guys that you have to worry about. It's all Tynan, Dries, Sherwood, Salamaki, Vecchione, Magno.
Yep.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Niles, we don't really know much about the AHL season right now, other than they won't be starting earlier than February 5th.
They're scheduled to start February 5th right now. That's their agreement.
Yep.
So, they're planning on having a season. They pretty much can't not.
But it is a good point. It does bring up a whole nother aspect to this of what the AHL season looks like as compared to being on a taxi squad.
Yeah.
We do need to take our first period break here. Sorry to cut you off, AJ. But we have ourselves a little bit of Green Mountain Dental Group, the best family dentist in the Denver metro area, just 15 minutes from downtown in Lakewood, right by where I used to go to elementary school, actually, just up the road there. They are pretty much just awesome. I actually went there as a kid even, and they take care of your teeth amazingly well, even for a stupid kid like me who never brushed his teeth. They would go in there and drill my cavities without too much pain or anything like that. And when you schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam, they'll get you a free Sonicare toothbrush. So makes brushing that much easier. An electric toothbrush, you just stick it in there. It does all the brushing for you. You just move it around your mouth. Super easy, super convenient, just like Green Mountain Dental Group, which will even send you postcards to remind you of when you need to schedule your next meeting, event, whatever you want to call a dental appointment. There you go. And again, look, they take care of you big time over there. Yeah, I couldn't think of the word for what you go to the dentist. What do you call going to the dentist? And then it's an appointment. That's what you do. So
I mean, I guess it could be an event of some kind for some folks, you know.
Happy Dental Day.
Yeah, exactly.
So head on over to Green Mountain Dental Group. They are really awesome at what they do. Again, supporting our partners is supporting us. And why not get yourself a free Sonicare toothbrush while you're at it? Moving on to second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. I'm going to start in a weird place, but we're eventually going to move this into who should the Avs have on the Taxi Squad. But I want to start with end of season for the Avs. Does Alex Newhook make the Taxi Squad?
Yeah.
He says yes. Kind of the conversation we were having before the break of we had Newhook kind of pinned for a guy that could really help the Colorado Eagles in the AHL playoffs potentially. But if you also have the opportunity to give him time with the NHL squad to practice at that level, boy, it sure seems like that could help a kid like that. I don't know.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because if the AHL season does happen and the Eagles do make the postseason, would you rather just him being in the AHL playoffs? Or would you rather him doing what Byram did last year? Although Byram didn't have to make a choice when he was on.
Right.
You know, there was no other, it was Byram either goes to Edmonton and sits, you know, and practices every day and doesn't get into any games, but he's around the team every day and he gets an idea of this is what it is to be a pro.
Or he does nothing.
There was no
Right.
no alternative.
Yeah.
It was or he does nothing. Yeah. Which is what Kaut had to do. For Newhook, if the Eagles are in the postseason, I think I'd probably prefer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, have him go down there on an ATO and just play with the Eagles in the playoffs until their run ends, and then he can come up and maybe join the Taxi Squad. But before that, I mean, the postseason, do they even really need a Taxi Squad? There are no roster limits.
That's true. And it's not like salary cap matters at that point either.
So
you just mold the Taxi Squad into the roster, I guess, at that point.
Right. It just becomes the Taxi Squad just become your Black Aces at that point.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting place to start, but realistically, where this conversation is going is who are the guys that should spend maybe not the whole year, but certainly a decent portion of the year on the Taxi Squad and or eventually moving up into the Avs lineup. Obviously, we've already pegged Bowen Byram. I think Martin Kaut is a pretty obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
Then the conversation starts. Logan O'Connor probably as well, maybe moving between the 13th forward there as the one scratch, whatever. We have our nice little graphic here of at least Byram and Kaut in the Taxi Squad. Driving them.
I like that you're driving it.
Yeah, right.
How did you end up the driver of this?
I have no idea, but I will happily drive the Taxi Squad around, dude. We gotta make that a show now. The DNVR Avalanche from the cab, getting player interviews from the back of the cab. That's the way to do it. Anyway. Byram and Kaut feel like easy choices. Logan O'Connor feels like a pretty easy choice. There are 3 other spots potentially filled on that Taxi Squad. Again, unless the Avs want to run 3 goalies on their lineup, which I assume they don't, one of them needs to be a goalie.
This is a real issue for them too.
Yep.
The goaltender issue is a serious issue because they wanted to run Werner and Miska. You know, Miska had a good year, came in, I think it was on an AHL deal last year.
Yeah, it started on an AHL deal.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was a tryout or an AHL deal, but I'm pretty sure it was just an AHL deal. Mm-hmm. And worked his way up to an actual NHL contract because they, injuries being what they were, they needed another guy just in case. And he was the backup behind Michael Hutchinson in Game 7 if something happened. So... Yeah, that was their plan. they really like Werner, and they want to give Werner a chance to see what he can do. That's a guy that, since he's been drafted, has progressively gotten better every year. Last year being his rookie year in the AHL, so okay, it sets a new baseline for him to work off of. And Werner was really feast or famine last year.
Yep.
He was either, it's exactly what we saw in his 2 NHL games.
Yep.
He was very, very good, or he got lit up. And, you'd like to keep the very good and limit the lit up to games where like that's the goal this year, right? Some consistency between those two. You keep the really good performances where he gives up 1 or 2, and then instead of giving up 5, maybe you give up 3.
Yeah, bring it in a little bit for sure.
Yeah. Every goalie's gonna have a tough night. If you can just keep your team in it on those tough nights, that's a huge separator between goaltenders that are legit and ones that aren't. Because if you're having a bad day and your team's you can't even stay competitive, you're not that helpful. Putting you out there is a huge risk. So it's a with Werner, it's gonna be a question. Is he better off? Is Adam Werner better off playing games, or is he better off on the taxi squad practicing in the NHL? I think that's a case. He needs to play.
I agree.
He needs games.
And the goalie conversation is one I think we'll get into a little bit more tomorrow specifically. Definitely. But it's a tough situation. It's with skaters, you're expecting injuries, and with goaltenders, you're at least hoping that injuries aren't coming. So it's hard to see how you rotate a third goaltender in.
Yeah. That they would need a third goaltender that, because on the taxi squad you're making your AHL salary. I think what they should do is they should go and sign just some veteran dude, give him a one-way deal, so that if he's on the taxi squad, he's still making $700K, make it financially viable for him. You don't plan on him getting in the way of any of your AHL guys. He is strictly a just in case we need this guy. Injuries, whatever. Even if you have an injury to a goaltender, he can be your backup, and then you can bring the guy that you actually want to play up through the taxi squad and then promote that guy, switch their places on the active roster. That guy doesn't necessarily ever actually have to play for you, but it's just insurance,
The old warm body play.
Exactly. And, go out and get into like I don't even know who's out there in the goaltender market. What's Jimmy Howard up to? Like, would that guy take $800K to just sit around? Because that's a variable amount of money on the taxi squad. He gets it. All he has to do is come and practice every day.
Yep.
At some point, and like, there isn't going to be a guy that makes anybody go, ooh, I like that guy. There's no upside in this guy. This is the Michael Hutchinson play all over again, except you don't have to trade for him. They need to go out and they need to sign a guy in order to be essentially their taxi squad goaltender to satisfy this requirement.
I know a Zamboni driver they could hire.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, you could still manipulate it so that this is not a guy that actually has to play for you, but I think they need to make one more goaltending move because of that. And because it doesn't count against the cap, any of that, I think they've got an opportunity.
I mean, regardless of how you feel about the Avs' current goalies, we saw last year where they waited and waited and waited, and finally they get to the start of the season and they have to make panic moves to go out and get Antoine Bibeau as a fourth, fifth goalie, whatever you want to call it. Being the third goalie. So it should be easy to not put themselves in that situation again.
Yeah, guys that are on the market right now that are unsigned, and I don't know if most of these are old guys, but you do have, Craig Anderson at 39. I would have a hard time imagining he comes back to the organization.
Yeah, I don't think that there's much love there.
Yeah, Jimmy Howard, Mike Condon, Ryan Miller.
Sure, pick a winner.
Yeah, like, we're talking. None of these guys excite you. They're not going to. Like, that guy isn't going to. be a guy that you're just like, yes, here we go. This is a guy with some upside, right? Like, there's just not that. There just aren't great options. But if you're Ryan Miller, you want to stay close to your family. I believe they're now like entrenched in SoCal.
Yeah.
Playing for Colorado, they're going to be in California, plenty. As the third goaltender, all he has to do, he has to practice every day, and he gets to make an extra $800,000. For me, I just think that's but why not, right?
I don't even like. The rules aren't fully clear yet, but there was some rule floating around that the taxi squad doesn't even necessarily have to travel with the team when it comes to like a third goaltender. So you could get into some weird stuff there, some football level stuff where you like sign a guy to your practice squad and he doesn't even play. But that's getting a little bit too deep of a cut there, maybe. I too am available to play on the taxi squad if some hockey team wants to pay me league minimum.
Yeah, look, old friend of the pod, JJ Jerez.
Yeah, there you go. That's an actual goaltender.
Yeah, get him in net.
Why not?
Give him a 2-way deal. I'm sure he'll be happy to go and practice every day and make $75,000 as his AHL salary. I mean, come on, why not?
In a heartbeat, I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to see how teams do navigate, particularly the goalie situation, but the entire taxi squad in general, which leaves a couple of interesting spots for the Avs. You have Shane Bowers, which is a conversation because he doesn't feel like he's quite where Martin Kaut is or where Bowen Byram is. It doesn't feel like he's right on the cusp of the roster. So is that a guy that you prefer to just get more games in the AHL over practicing? Although another player who did go to the bubble with the Avs. So
I think so. I think he should play.
Yeah.
I think Shane Bowers is the guy that needs to play. I will say, and I wrote this in my piece, the advantage for a guy like Bowers, who we think is like right on that edge, maybe not 100% ready, but pretty damn close. The advantage of him practicing is that there's no guesswork from the coaching staff. They see him every day. It's their own evaluation. That's not to say there isn't that's not to suggest any lack of trust between Cronin and his coaching staff and the NHL staff. It's just that when you're going off of secondhand information, somebody when you're getting your info from someone else, there's always that possibility of like that guy shows up and you're like, well, what the hell is this? Yeah. I was told this guy was ready to go for us, and what's going on here? If Bowers is practicing with the NHL club every single day, that the NHL coaches are the ones who are seeing him every day. They're the ones evaluating him. They're the ones who are saying, man, this guy's doing everything right for us. We love what he's doing in practice. We just need to find a way to get him in the lineup. And then when a guy gets hurt, bam, you just do that. Right? Like, that's the advantage. That
seems easy. Yeah.
That's where you make the argument that Bowers on a taxi squad is better than being in the AHL. The other argument is obvious as well. You want that guy playing games. You want that guy down there doing what he has to do. And with Kaut, well, you and I are comfortable thinking, okay, well, he's 13th forward. They're ready to go. Let's make this happen.
Yep.
Maybe he's better off playing games too. And you'd rather just have, maybe this is the opportunity where you fill up your taxi squad with, maybe this is where you fill up the taxi squad with the AHL veterans, the Mika Salamakis and
so they aren't
just
the eating top 6 roster space on your AHL team.
Exactly. And now Shane Bowers and Martin Kaut and even Nick Henry and Ty Lewis, these guys are getting way bigger roles on your AHL roster instead of having to compete with these veterans for them. What about that? There are so many different angles to this that I don't know that there's an obvious right or wrong way. I just think that there's a lot of they have to make the decisions about what they value the most. And I think it's going to be very telling when they make their calls on their taxi squad and they say these are the guys. And another interesting note is that they can't start sending guys to the taxi squad until the last day of training camp.
Correct.
So when they start making cuts, it's not like we can turn around and be like, oh, well, he's headed to the taxi squad.
It's it's a little bit of a double-sided sword too. As you already mentioned, you also can't go straight from the AHL team to the NHL. So if you're on the AHL team, you have to hit the taxi squad first before you can go up to the NHL team.
Be there for a week and then go to the NHL team. So if you're ripping it up, and Shane Bauer starts the season with a 12-game point streak, and the Avs are like, screw this, man. He's done.
This dude. Yeah.
There's nothing left for him down there. Then I think at that point, then you just call him up and be done. Work his way through the taxi squad, drop him there, and wait for an opportunity to play him.
Yep. A couple of chat questions here. Late to the stream, was any topic of PTOs asked or discussed? We didn't discuss it. I don't think there's anything to discuss there. The Avs simply have no room for PTOs.
Right. Whatever space a PTO would take, we're talking about these guys right now as taxi squad guys.
Yep. And then I think I saw a tweet from you, AJ, but your thoughts on the helmet advertisements?
Cool.
Yep.
I'm all about it. They need to make their money. As soon as, to be honest, I don't think the league is in dire straits, but the sooner they make as much of this money back as they can that they've lost over the last calendar year, the sooner things go back to normal. The cap starts going up. The players start getting paid. Blah 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 blah. That's a good thing. That's the cap going up is maybe the best thing for cup contenders, because it gives them more opportunity to keep their guys. That's going to be a big deal. You want by year 3 of Byram and Kaut's ELCs, you want the cap to be going back up.
So you can pay those dudes.
Yeah, so you can pay those dudes and keep Nathan McKinnon around. That's the more money that they make, the better. And I think it was Cole that said it should be Comcast for the Avs.
Oh, that'd be hilarious. They put Comcast as they're not on Comcast.
Yep.
Wow.
Let it be Comcast. Any other helmet ad?
Yeah.
No good.
Appreciate the love, coupon user 16. Your name sounds like a bot name. I'm not going to lie to you. If I thought a bot was around, I think it'd be coupon user 16. But
I mean, did you just imagine you're signing up for an account and you're like, what's something that describes me? What's something that's personal to me? When I go to the grocery store, I love coupons. I'm a big time coupon user, so
no hate, just making sure you're not a bot. That's all. Second period break here with DraftKings Sportsbook. If you want to raise your cap for Christmas all this week, the opening week of the NBA, you can bet on any NBA game. Bet $1 to win $100. It's a great Christmas present right there. If you have a good read on someone who's going to win a basketball game, why not add $100 to your pocket? Seems easy enough. And when you love everything over at DraftKings, they have odds boosts every single day that are great bets. Essentially, pretty much every week, if you listen to the show, we give you a bet that's free money most of the time. Whether it varies. Sometimes it's UFC, sometimes it's football, but they regularly give out ridiculously good odds on stuff that is pretty much guaranteed to happen. So if you just want to make a little bit of money that way, that's always a great way to do it. If you want to bet on more, you can always follow DNVR Bets, where RK and Andre give you a bunch of great bets to help you win as well. So head on over to DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super safe, secure, and reliable, making it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. Download that top-rated sportsbook app now and use promo code DNVR when you sign up to let them know we sent you. Get that bet $1 to win $100 option. and tons of other odds boosts as well, like I already mentioned. It's for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. And when you win thousands of dollars, you're going to want to call up Chevalier Mortgage. Mike and Virginia are not only diehard Bronco fans, but they've supported DNVR for a long time as members as well. You visit them at DNVRmortgage.com. When you head on over there, you can not only enter to win a free DNVR shirt or hat of your choice, but more importantly, you can get signed up for a free consultation to discuss all of your options. Mike and Virginia will work tirelessly to find the best loan for your situation. Visit them at DNVRmortgage.com and enter to win for that free stuff. You can go to DNVRmortgage.com or call Virginia directly at 303-257-6578. Again, awesome people. Do an awesome job there. If you're looking to purchase a home, they are the people to go to. Michael Chevalier, NMLS 1931006. Virginia Chevalier, NMLS 1910631. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. When you look at the 6 players on a taxi squad, we've covered maybe 4 of them with Kaut, O'Connor, Bowers, Werner and or third goaltender, and then Byram. So 5, I guess. That leaves one spot open, and you've already alluded to the fact of maybe they put Mika Salamaki, maybe they put Kiefer Sherwood, maybe they go with the vets in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
How much flexibility do you expect to actually see on this taxi squad? Is it going to be mostly the same handful of guys the whole season, or could we see a rotating cast come through?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a rotating cast because I think they're going to be, depending on what's going on with injuries, if they have a lot of them, then they can rotate them and they can get those guys into games.
Yeah.
But I think what you really don't want is a guy who's playing on your taxi, he's on your taxi squad the whole season.
Without getting games.
Doesn't get into any games. Say he's like the 4th forward on that taxi squad.
Mm-hmm.
And does not the other 3 forwards get into games. He's next in line, no injury happens. He just doesn't get into the game. The playoffs roll around. That guy hasn't played any games all year. Injuries show up. His first game of the season is game 2 of your first round series.
Yeah, that'd be brutal.
You don't want to do that to a guy. So I think it would say, I think that they should draw a line in the sand and say, we're comfortable with the guy on the taxi squad without getting into any games for 3 weeks. And then we send that guy down to the AHL. He plays into a couple of games and kind of just stays fresh a little bit, knocks some of that rust off, and then comes back up. And then, he swaps places with whoever replaced him, whatever. And I think that's probably how I would do it. There would be a couple of guys that I would keep around regularly under the assumption that you're going to have injuries and they will play. Byram, Kaut, O'Connor as the 3 main guys that I think are going to get into games. The one guy that I'm really not sure what to do with is Connor Timmins.
Yep, and that's where I was headed to is, look, we're assuming Byram's making the taxi squad. We're just assuming that that's the case. If he doesn't, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But with Byram making the taxi squad, it becomes pretty hard to see a path for Timmins through the taxi squad up to the NHL, at least in the short term. When injuries happen, if the Avs defensive injuries pile up, that's a different conversation. But if you're running a guy on the taxi squad in Byram as your 7th D, potentially running another D as a scratch, maybe off and on, Timmins would be one of those guys that runs the risk of never getting into an NHL game if he's just sitting around on the taxi squad. So,
yeah.
And I expect him to start in the AHL since we've already heard from the Avs. The one thing they want him to do is play games and be healthy.
Yep.
So I think it makes sense that he certainly doesn't start on a taxi squad. Will he bounce up and down in the year? Maybe. We'll see. Just kind of depends. But we'll see. That's all I'll say on Timmins in that regard.
Yeah, with Timmins, it's just about staying healthy. He's got to play games. I wrote this in my piece. It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to sit around in practice where he's consistently looked great with the Avs. His best performances have been in training camps and in practices and when they haven't been in games. That's not to say he did not have a good year with the Eagles. He had a very good year with the Eagles
when he was.
But right, the problem was he had the lower body injury that took some time away.
Yep.
Then he got up to the NHL, and then he gets into his second game, and he gets his bell rung a little bit. We're not even sure what that injury was. We've all just assumed it was a head injury and moved on. Yep. We don't know what that was, and he was out for Game 7, and it's just like they can't get the guy to stay into games consistently.
Yeah,
and it's not all the concussion issues either. So it's what's the deal with him? So
we don't know.
That's the thing with him is that because if he goes down and he plays 30 games with the Eagles and he's healthy and he's fine, then I think you're like, okay, we're feeling a lot better about this.
Yep, and the interesting conversation there, at least for guys like you and me who follow the prospects heavily, who watch a lot of the Avs AHL squad, we hear it all the time, how the Avs struggle to develop guys in the AHL and get them up to the NHL. And this taxi squad is something that makes that path easier for a lot of players. It gives you that transitionary period where instead of players' only opportunity to practice with the big guns is training camp, and then you don't see them for a year, you now have this opportunity to bring guys up and practice with the NHL team regularly throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a big advantage for the Avs, given their prospect-laden pockets?
It should be. I mean, it to be honest, it flat out should be.
Yep.
Their normal process hasn't worked, and so maybe this is an opportunity for them to see. So what they do instead is they give the taxi squad guys those spots to younger guys, and those guys make easier transitions into the NHL. Then in the future, that tells them, okay, if we can get these, we think these guys are ready. If we can move these guys onto the roster and just get them rolling with the NHL guys on a regular basis, when we get them into games, they'll be ready to go. Instead of being just like, well, we would rather just play the vets over the kids because we don't trust the kids. We don't know what's going to happen with them. And then giving them the same nonsense about just not being comfortable with rookies. For some reason, you're much more comfortable with a bad vet.
Which, I mean, over the last couple of years, it feels like that's becoming less true anyway.
It does. It absolutely does. I mean, there have been moments of frustration from both of us, but really, like, they've turned the roster over to the young players for the most part.
I mean, they played Connor Timmins in the playoffs when it came down to it.
They played Connor Timmins over Kevin Connaughton and Mark Barberio.
Yep.
When they had an opportunity to play healthy versions of each. They chose to do that and did not result in anything that would make them say, well, that was definitely the right thing to do, but it was an encouraging step.
It wasn't definitely the wrong thing to do either. So
exactly. The fact that he got hurt does not ding their process or their thought process of it at all. It just, that's more of a personal question. But they have given jobs to kids in recent years. We saw what's everybody's favorite Tyson Jost argument? They rushed him.
Yep.
So, despite the fact that how they handled Jost had consistently worked for them when it came to first round picks.
Up until Jost.
Right. And then all of a sudden that process got, they rushed him. And it was like, well, did they? Like, you can't blame them for feeling the way that they did. So, I do think that it's one of those things that gets a little overblown Ryan Graves has earned a job on this blue line. He rolled into a veteran, an older blue line, a blue line that was in transition, I should say. I don't want to call it older. And just took a job.
Yep.
Like, it would have been easy for them to default to Barbs or Connaughton last year. And they were like, nope, we like what Ryan Graves did. Ryan Graves earned this job and had a great year. Earned his contract. So they're in that awkward spot where we criticize them for a thing when they do it, but they don't really do it so much that I think it's a major detriment, because it's not. I don't think the answer is always to play the kids either. I don't think it's always, you always choose a prospect every single time. There are some guys who have been pretty good that they've gotten,
Sure.
Who've given them good games is what I'm saying.
Definitely. Apparently some hockey news here. The Lightning have just extended Eric Chernak for just shy of $3 million for 3 years. They also signed Jan Ruta for $1.3 million for 2 years. This is going to put them at like $6 million over the cap, and they have not signed Anthony Cirelli yet.
Yeah, Kucherov he only makes 9.5, so they're going to be cutting it real close, even with that LTIR money.
Yeah, interesting how Tampa's going to navigate this as well. Another team that might have to do some finagling with the taxi squad, to say the least. Yeah,
well, and I saw people who were like, oh, all they have to do is just bury Tyler Johnson on the taxi squad. It's like, well, that clears up $1 million.
Yeah.
It does not clear up $5 million. It clears up $1 million, and then Tyler Johnson's not allowed to play for them anymore.
Yep.
So that might be one where they put, they put a guy, bury Cedric Paquette for a week.
Really dance around that cap to save dollars. Yeah.
Yep.
So it probably another advantage that the Avs have is they're in a flexible enough situation where they can mostly do what they want with their taxi squad.
Yeah, they don't have to bury anybody, and if they really want to, they can just straight up call 2 more guys up. They could put Byram and they could put Kaut, the LCs, on the NHL roster and just be fine.
Yep. So I'm sure they'll use some of the flexibility of the taxi squad, but if it comes down to it, they don't have to.
Yeah, which is a big thing. They don't have to.
Yep. So things are looking good. I think the taxi squad only helps the Avs, certainly. Honestly, it probably only helps every team. But the Avs in particular, I think, have a lot to gain, if only just from Byram and Kaut, let alone the potential for Bauer's new hook or playing Betts there as well.
Definitely.
So
and the whatever's going to happen with Connor Timmins.
Yeah, sure. Timmins, however that situation plays out, again, just more flexibility with the taxi squad to do whatever the Avs want to do with all of their guys. So what is that squeaky noise?
It is the dog in the other room playing with his toy.
Got the toys out now.
It was so funny. He got up today, and the first thing he did, he comes downstairs and he grabs the ball. And he's like, "We're playing."
It's happening.
Like, this dude, he woke up ready today.
Meanwhile, my dog is still asleep on the bed. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking. He came downstairs at like 12:30.
All right, so not exactly an early bird.
Yeah. No. And then he goes bed. He just goes bed to bed. Like
true,
do, right?
True. Yeah. Not the bed, it's the couch, whatever.
Right. And that's getting him off the couch to go upstairs and go to bed last night was a hassle in itself. And it's like, bud, you're just going from comfy spot to comfy spot. Come on.
Yep. So Tampa is fine for the moment. I've someone Saravalli said they have about $2 million left on the off-season limit as it stands right now. So
they should still make a move, man.
I agree. It's still going to be an absolute nightmare for them if they don't. But
yeah. Yep. Anyway.
Sorry. We're going to get out of here for today.
Yeah,
thank you, everyone, for watching, listening, however you consume the pod. If you're not on YouTube, check us out there. We do our shows live. You can see our faces. We have graphics and stuff. Pretty cool. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, as that helps us out a ton. Other than that, we will be back tomorrow. I think we're diving into that goalie situation a little bit heavier tomorrow. So if you want more info on that, it should be an interesting show. And then WJC conversation on Christmas Eve. So hope to see you all in the live chat then, and we will talk to you guys later.